person who collects a diagnosis like a key is not looking for a door. They are looking for a place to sit down. You have watched them search. You have watched the search exhaust them more than the wound ever did. Every symptom was a question they could not answer. The not knowing became a second illness, layered over the first, and they carried both until the name arrived. Then something in them stopped fighting. But you did not stop fighting the pain. You stopped fighting the name. The label became a permission slip to stop looking. You told yourself you were finally understood. What actually happened is you found a way to silence the question without ever answering it. The diagnosis became a ceiling, not a floor. You stopped asking what you could become because you finally had a reason for what you already were. The relief you felt was not the relief of healing. It was the relief of surrender. You are thinking this is about someone else. That thought is the protection. It is working. This pattern does not begin in adulthood. It begins in a childhood where uncertainty was unbearable, and someone with authority finally gave a name to what was wrong. The child who is told they have a learning disability does not hear a starting point. They hear an explanation. The explanation replaces the effort. The name becomes a container for every future limitation. This is not the fault of the diagnosis itself. Diagnoses are tools, but the child who receives one in a system that does not also teach them to exceed it learns something else. They learn that identity is fixed, that categories are walls, and that the relief of being named is preferable to the terror of becoming unknown again. The evolutionary mechanism underneath is simple. The human mind categorizes to survive. Unknown threats demand constant vigilance. Named threats can be filed. The child files themselves. The adult continues the practice. They collect labels the way others collect credentials, each one a small fortress against the question that has followed them since before they had words for it. The question is not what is wrong with me. The question is what would I have to do if nothing were wrong enough to stop me? In practice, this looks exact and repeatable. The person receives the name in a doctor's office, a therapist's chair, an online quiz they took at 3 in the morning. They feel something shift. The shift is real. They return to their life and begin to use the name as a filter. Every decision passes through it. They do not go to the party because of their social anxiety. They do not start the project because of their ADHD. They do not leave the relationship because of their attachment style. The name explains the avoidance so thoroughly that the avoidance disappears from view. It becomes invisible, automatic, protected by the legitimacy of the category. They rehearse conversations they never have, but now they rehearse them with diagnostic precision, citing their condition to themselves before anyone else can ask. The email they write and delete is not cowardice anymore. It is their condition. The decision they make 3 times without executing is not paralysis. It is their neurodivergence. The vocabulary has given them a way to experience the limitation as a kind of membership. They belong to something now. The belonging is the trap. You have already applied this to 3 other people. That is the mechanism protecting itself. The intelligent person's version is the most seductive. They do not collect one diagnosis. They collect frameworks. They understand the mechanism so thoroughly that they can describe it to you while standing inside it. They say they are doing the work. They have read the books, taken the assessments, mapped their childhood with academic precision. The vocabulary of psychology has given them a sophisticated set of reasons to remain exactly where they are. They say they are processing. They say they need more information. They say they are being thoughtful. What they are doing is the same thing anyone else would do. They are not moving. The intelligence is in the service of the stillness. The high achiever's version is different only in its visibility. They use the diagnosis to explain the gap between what they accomplish and what they believe they could. The name becomes the reason they are not larger than they are. It protects their grandiosity while excusing their restraint. They could have been extraordinary, they tell themselves, if not for the name they finally found. The name gives them a story of stolen potential that is easier to inhabit than the uncertainty of testing that potential and finding it smaller than imagined. The person who has read about this pattern and believes they have escaped it is often the most thoroughly captured. They use the vocabulary of awareness to avoid the experience of change. They say they are practicing self-compassion. They say they honor their nervous system. They say they are done with shame. The language is correct. The life is unchanged. I do not have this pattern. I have only watched it across thousands of accounts. repeated with variations so precise they could be mathematical. What I find remarkable is not how often it fails people. It is how reliably it protects them from finding out. The cost is not in the obvious places. The obvious cost is the life unlived, the risks untaken, the relationships unformed. The hidden cost is in the identity. The person who has named themselves into a corner loses the ability to distinguish between the condition and the self. They say my anxiety instead of I am anxious. They say my trauma instead of I experienced something. The language of possession becomes the grammar of imprisonment. Over years, this produces a subtle but total collapse. They believe they are self-aware because they can name every mechanism. They do not see that the naming has replaced the living. The relationship cost accumulates in silence. Partners learn not to ask for what the diagnosis has already explained away. Friends accommodate a limitation that has become a border. The person finds themselves surrounded by people who do not challenge them, who have accepted the category, who love them within its walls. The love becomes indistinguishable from the prison. The moment of understanding usually arrives late. A person wakes in middle age and realizes the name they found at 20 has been speaking for them ever since. They have not had a thought the name did not filter. They have not made a choice the name did not pre-approve. The diagnosis they collected to understand themselves has become the only self they have left. Most people who become aware of this pattern do not escape it. Awareness is not the solvent it promises to be. Awareness becomes another layer. They say they know they use the diagnosis as a crutch. They say they are working on it. The rare exception is a person who stops using the name as an explanation and begins using it as a single data point among many. They hold the diagnosis loosely enough to act against it. They go to the party despite the social anxiety. They start the project despite the ADHD. They leave the relationship despite the attachment style. They do not deny the name, they deny it the final word. This is rare because it requires living in uncertainty again. The name was adopted precisely to end that uncertainty. To loosen its grip is to welcome back the condition the name was meant to cure. Most people will not do this. Most people will use their awareness to build a more sophisticated version of the same prison. They will say they are a work in progress. They will mean they are still looking for a better name. You did not find the truth. You found a way to stop looking for it. And now, you will use the name to explain why you cannot leave the room. The room has become comfortable. The name has become the furniture. You arrange yourself among the explanations and call it home. The door is not locked. That is the part you will not let yourself know. The door has never been locked. You are free to stand, free to walk, free to find what you might become in the space the name cannot name. You will not do this. The name has told you who you are, and you have believed it more than you have believed any person, any possibility, any version of yourself that did not yet exist. The diagnosis was never the ceiling. Your belief in it was. The surrender you mistook for relief was the moment you stopped being a question and became an answer. Answers do not grow. Answers do not become. Answers end. And you have ended yourself so thoroughly that you will use the ending to explain why you cannot begin.